I'm only in love with Maria. So please, let's get divorced. Tony said solemnly. I couldn't respond immediately to him. I wanted to say, let's try again. Don't leave me. That's how much I still loved Tony. All right, I understand. Those were the only words I could manage. And so, we divorced. Since then, I've been living with my son, just the two of us. What? Why now? One day, I received a letter from Tony, who had chosen his mistress over me. He had died in a car accident a month ago. Yet here was a letter from him, and I opened it with suspicion. If something happens to me. The contents were shocking. No way, this can't be true. As I finished reading, I began to tremble. And then, I made a certain decision. My name is Kathy. I'm a 32-year-old working mother, just like any other. I have a husband, Tony, who is a year older than me, and our son, Ryan. Kathy, you're really good at being considerate. Huh? You know, like how you serve the food, push the plates aside, or call the waiter at just the right time. I met Tony at a group date my friend dragged me to. I've always been bad at asserting myself and usually end up just listening. That time, while everyone else was having fun, I was busy helping out when Tony spoke to me. Are you bored? No, it's not that, but I'm not good at talking. I see. Oh, have you tried this dish? It's really good. Tony was always considerate and smiling. Thanks to him, I managed to enjoy the group date somewhat. Would you like to exchange contact information? We exchanged numbers and soon became close. He confessed his feelings, and we started dating. After a few years of dating, we got married. Our baby is so adorable. How about naming him Ryan? That sounds perfect. Welcome to the world, Ryan. Soon after getting married, I gave birth to Ryan. Tony was the one who named him. I'm so glad I married you, Kathy. Thanks to you, I'm happy. Tony said, smiling. Nodding with a smile, I replied, I'm happy too, thanks to you, Tony. I believed that this happiness would last forever. I truly believed that from the bottom of my heart. Mom, I finished my homework. Oh, you're already done? That's great. Ryan is very smart, just like Tony. He is diligent with his studies, doing his homework without being told and often asking Tony to help him with it. We are very proud of our son. However, there are people who do not think well of Ryan. Those people are my in-laws. Ryan doesn't really look like Tony. Whose child is he, anyway? My mother-in-law dislikes that Ryan resembles me. Every time we meet, she makes snide comments to Ryan. What are you talking about? That's right. Ryan is definitely my son. If you keep saying things like that, I won't come here anymore. Neither Tony nor I tolerated my mother-in-law's words. Since she cares deeply about Tony, she would apologize, saying, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. However, she repeats the same comments whenever we visit, so it's clear she doesn't mean it. Then there's my father-in-law. I don't like how weak he is for a boy. He dislikes that Ryan prefers studying indoors to playing outside. He also hates that Ryan uses a tablet for studying, often trying to take it away from him. You're going to become stupid if you keep playing with that thing inside the house. It's different now. Ryan is studying with this. He can't study with something like that. It's just like the mobiles you use. Besides, when I was a kid, you told me to study indoors all the time. Why should Ryan play outside? My father-in-law had made Tony stay inside and study when he was a child. Of course, it's not good for Ryan to use the tablet all the time. But Ryan often plays outside with his friends. The problem is, there are no kids around my in-laws' house, and there is no yard for him to play in, so he prioritizes studying. I'm really sorry. My parents don't like that I married you, Kathy. Apparently, they wanted Tony to marry another woman. She was an older childhood friend of Tony's and the daughter of a well-known company president in their hometown. She's loved Tony since they were kids. How could he settle down with someone like her? Enough. I love Kathy and Ryan with all my heart. Don't disappoint me anymore. Because of this, we gradually became distant and rarely visit my in-laws. However, they sometimes visit us without notice or show up on Ryan's way home from school. Just ignore them if they come over. I work from home, so I'm usually at home. My in-laws know this, so even if I pretend to be out, they bang on the door and shout, causing a lot of stress. Though once, a neighbor called the police, so they left quickly. So I've been ignoring them. Why are they so persistent? I muttered to myself. I always accompany Ryan to and from school to keep an eye out for my in-laws. My parents also keep an eye on him, so there haven't been any incidents so far. But it's only natural to worry. Maybe we should move closer to your parents. With that suggestion from Tony, we started considering moving. The moving expenses are a burden, but if it means we'll be at peace, we started looking for a new place to live. One day, I got a call from an unknown number. Is it someone from work? At first, I was cautious of the unfamiliar number, but since it kept calling, I decided to answer. Hello? Finally, you answered. You're so slow, you peasant. A woman's voice insulted me as soon as I answered the phone. I grimaced, debating whether to hang up. Who is this? If you don't have a reason to call, I'm hanging up. How rude. I'm Maria Smith, Tony's future wife. What? What is this woman talking about? I wondered if I should hang up again. If this is a prank, I'm hanging up. It's the truth. I'm Tony's childhood friend, and I'm going to marry him. I remembered that Tony mentioned his childhood friend's name was Maria. Maria is selfish, and she's not my type at all, he had said before. Could this woman on the phone be that childhood friend? If so, why is she calling me? These questions made me stay silent. Are you listening? Yes, I'm listening. What about his childhood friend? It's obvious, isn't it? Tony is mine. Break up with him immediately. Even over the phone, her voice was mocking. How much does this woman look down on me? Sorry, but no. Tony and I love each other. That's just for now. He wanted to have some fun before marrying me. Don't get cocky. I could see why Tony disliked her. There was no reasoning with this woman. Well, I'm busy with work. I'm hanging up now, I said and hung up the phone. She kept calling multiple times afterward, but I ignored her. Eventually, my phone went silent, but then I received a message from Maria. How long do you think you can keep working against the Smith Group? Smith Group. I had a bad feeling. Could it be the Smith? The Smith Group is a large company that runs multiple restaurants. The president's last name is Smith, so what Maria said might be true. Of all companies, the Smith Group? I had work dealings with the Smith Group. Additionally, they were Tony's business partners. I need to discuss this with Tony right away. I told Tony about Maria's calls as soon as he came home from work. Tony's eyes widened in surprise. No way. Maria? Tony, are you okay? I asked, worried about his obvious agitation. He shook his head after a moment. I'm fine. I'll handle her. Tony smiled to reassure me. Despite my uneasy feeling, I decided to leave it to him as usual. All right. I'll leave it to you, I said, and Tony smiled, relieved. Whenever something happened, Tony would say, leave it to me. And always solve it. So I trusted him this time too, but I would later regret it. Is Dad coming home late again tonight? Seems like it. From the next day, Tony started coming home late. He said it was because of the busy season at work, but considering the timing, it might have something to do with Maria. But Tony wouldn't tell me anything, so all I could do was worry and wait. I hope he comes home early. Me too. I nodded at Ryan's words, hoping to return to our normal life soon. A year later, the situation changed. What? What are you saying? Maria is pregnant with my child. So, we need to break up. Tony said this expressionlessly. I couldn't believe what he was saying and just stared at his face. My decision won't change. I'll give you custody and the house. Don't be ridiculous. We were living in the new house we had carefully chosen over the past year. This house, filled with our dreams, and our precious son, Tony wouldn't just give them up so easily. Think it over. Tell me the truth. So, I pressed Tony for answers. But he wouldn't even look at me, let alone answer. I won't sign the divorce papers until you tell me the truth. Fine. Then I'll stay at my parents' house. After that, Tony never came back to our new home and started living with his parents. His parents were thrilled about this. They called every day, urging me to break up and free Tony. Despite this, I wanted to know the truth. Kathy, you need to let him go. But when my parents sided with the divorce, things changed. They had always supported me and believed in Tony with me. Suddenly, they changed their minds. Why are you saying this, Dad? I'm not convinced. Please, Kathy. We don't want you to be unhappy. With my parents also persuading me, I decided to divorce Tony. I'm sorry, Ryan. We won't be living with your dad anymore. I see. Ryan said this with a hint of sadness. Fortunately, my earnings alone could support the two of us. My parents would surely help us too. I'll be fine. I'm okay, with just you, Mom. I hugged Ryan as he smiled. For his sake, I needed to stay strong. I want to talk to you one last time before the divorce. All right. I'll come home once. So, I decided to meet Tony one last time. You look a bit worn out. Yes, I've been pretty busy. When I met Tony after a long time, he looked exhausted and sighed repeatedly. I told you before, but I'll give you the house and custody. You can just abandon Ryan that easily? Tony's face showed a complex expression for a moment at my words. But he quickly returned to a blank expression. I still have a child to think about. Is that child with Maria? At those words, Tony looked away. The Tony I knew never looked away from someone speaking seriously. Is the Tony I loved gone forever? So, you don't need us anymore, do you? Yes, that's right. Finally, Tony looked at me. I only have Maria now. So please, let's break up. Tony said this solemnly. I couldn't respond immediately to him. I wanted to ask him to reconsider, to not abandon us. That's how much I still loved Tony. I see. I understand. Those were the only words I could muster. And so, we divorced. Mom, you don't have to worry about anything. I'll protect you in Dad's place. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan comforted me as I felt down. I didn't need Tony anymore. As long as I had Ryan, that was enough. I'm fine too. I'll make sure you're happy, Ryan. I said, hugging him tightly. And I decided to move on from Tony. Since then, I've been living with my son, just the two of us. What? Why now? One day, I received a letter from Tony, who had chosen his mistress. He had passed away in a car accident a month ago. Dad told me that Tony was hit and run and died. I felt deep sadness when I heard that. I had chosen to divorce him, but a part of me still loved him. However, he had chosen his childhood friend turned mistress over me. So, I didn't attend his funeral. Why a letter from Tony? Despite that, I received a letter from him and read it with suspicion. I truly regret what I did to you and Ryan. I'm really sorry. The letter started with an apology. The familiar handwriting made me nostalgic and almost brought me to tears. As I read further. What? I couldn't help but speak out. If I had. The contents were shocking to me. No way, this can't be true. I trembled as I finished reading. And then, I made a certain decision. I understand your feelings. But this and that are separate matters. Muttering to myself, I decided to take action immediately. With a resolve of never forgiving and never losing, I moved forward. I'm Kathy, Tony's wife. I need to see the president. The first place I headed to was the headquarters of the Smith Group. There, I asked the receptionist to call the president. So, you're Kathy. My condolences for Tony. No, it's not about that. I received this recently. I handed the letter from Tony to the president of Smith. He took it, read through it, and nodded solemnly. Everything written here is true. Then, Tony. Yes, he never betrayed you and your son. Hearing those clear words, I almost burst into tears. Seeing me, the president of Smith stood up. I sincerely apologize for everything that happened. How could such an honest man have raised a woman like her? I thought as I looked at the president. No matter how much you apologize, he's not coming back. If only you had acknowledged this sooner. I must apologize for that too. Although we haven't gathered all the evidence yet. The president then revealed something even more shocking. As I listened, a part of me felt vindicated. I understand. I don't intend to blame you, but I need your cooperation. Please bring that evidence to me. Of course. I will gather all the evidence. After making a firm promise with the president, I began my preparations. I will clear Tony's name. For the sake of Ryan's and my happiness. Just you watch, Maria. And you too, Tony's despicable parents. 3 days after meeting with the president of Smith, I had gathered enough evidence and headed to my former in-laws' house. I'll be right by your side. Yes, please. Leaving Ryan with my mother who was waiting at home, I rang the intercom with my father at the in-laws' house. Yes. Who is it? The woman who appeared had blonde hair and heavy makeup. So, this is Maria. The woman who took Tony away from me. Nice to meet you. I'm Kathy, and this is my father. Huh? You're the infamous Kathy? Maria glared at my father and me. What do you want? This house is mine now. I have something important to discuss. By the way, it's quite pathetic that after being kicked out of a mansion, you have to live in such a humble house. As I smiled, Maria's face flushed with anger. Actually, the president of Smith, upon learning about Tony, had disowned and evicted her. That's why she's reluctantly living in this ordinary, inconvenient house. Don't get cocky. You were the one who got dumped. There's a lot to discuss, including that. Can we come in? My father said calmly, and reluctantly, she let us in. Oh, look who it is, the loser. What do you want now? My former in-laws were there too, and they looked suspiciously at me. I smiled at them. I'm here to talk about Tony. Now it's time for payback. I'll make sure they regret their actions. Actually, I recently received a letter from Tony. What? A letter from Tony? I showed them the letter from Tony that I had also shown to President Smith. At first, my former in-laws and Maria frowned, but as they read further, their expressions changed. Did you never expect to receive a letter revealing the truth after his death? The letter detailed their misdeeds. You pressured Tony into marrying that woman by every means possible. Knowing that Maria still loved Tony, my former in-laws decided that marrying into the Smith Group would benefit them. So, they pressured Tony to marry her. The letter says, every day, my parents called and told me to marry Maria. It disrupted my work and made everyone around me look at me coldly. They called him day and night, and even contacted his workplace. As a result, Tony always felt like he was walking on eggshells. Yet, Tony refused, saying he loved only Kathy and Ryan. Frustrated, you resorted to extreme measures. My father glared at my former in-laws as he spoke. Tony had confided in my father, who understood his desire to protect me from being dragged into the mess. That's why, knowing the full truth now, my father stood by my side. You told Tony, we've given up. Let's have one last drink as a family, and called him here. Though wary, Tony thought that if anything happened, he would cut ties with them for good and came to their house one last time. There, they made him drink heavily until he was drunk. Once he was completely drunk, they called Maria over to create a situation. Tony, being too drunk to remember, had no memory of infidelity. However, the fact that he spent the night with a woman cornered him. He decided to talk about divorce to avoid dragging us into his mess with Maria. What you didn't foresee was President Smith disowning Maria after learning the truth. Maria, thrown out of her home, stayed in this house. Just as she planned to live off Tony's earnings, he died in an accident. Driving your son to the brink for your own gain. You're not parents. Have some shame. My father's yell made my in-laws flinch and look down. So what? Tony chose me, didn't he? Yes, because you told him you were pregnant. I looked at Maria's stomach as I spoke. There was no sign of pregnancy, raising doubts about her claim. You went to great lengths to get Tony, didn't you? She used her status as the president's daughter to pressure Tony at his company. Under the watchful eyes of a major company, Tony faced cold stares from his colleagues. And you waited for him every day after work. Maria stalked him every day outside his workplace. To avoid her, Tony worked late and took long detours, always coming home late. I just wanted to express my feelings to Tony. Your feelings, huh? Did you want a man who wouldn't fall for you that badly? Maria flinched at my words. Tony knew what Maria thought of him. And he had written about it in his letter. He wrote, "She thinks every man is hers. That's why she's obsessed with me because I'm cold to her. There's no love in it." That's not true. I was devoted to Tony. Oh, really? Then you must enjoy playing with fire. As I said this to Maria, I showed her several photos. In them, Maria was cozying up with different men. What? That's... And Tony told you, didn't he? I don't even know if the child is mine, and I can't love someone who stole my happiness. It's Tony's fault. He ignored me even though I confessed my feelings to him. So you arranged the car accident? At that moment, a cold voice from President Smith echoed. What? Why is Dad's voice? Maria looked around, bewildered. Then she noticed the smartphone in my hand. I asked Kathy to let me listen in when she said she was confronting you today. Dad, why did you throw me out? It's only natural to disown a daughter who destroys lives and becomes a criminal. His voice was cold, not one of a father speaking to his daughter. Tony had been consulting with me for a long time. He was planning to bring me proof of Maria's infidelity and your scheme against him. But he died in an accident on his way to see me. He was punished for betraying me. It was your fault. You pushed him onto the street when he was waiting at the crosswalk. Caught off guard, Tony didn't notice Maria, and he ended up stepping into the street, getting hit by a car. He was killed in a hit and run. He was such a good man, and your selfishness took his precious life. How does Dad know that? I was on the phone with Tony when it happened. Tony had called President Smith to say he was on his way. That's how he knew about the accident and heard Tony shout, "Maria," over the phone. So, as a final act of justice, I've been gathering evidence of your crime. Even Dad's betraying me. You're the one who lost our trust first. With that, the call ended. Maria kept calling out, "Dad. Dad," to the silent phone. The evidence President Smith mentioned has been given to the police. It's only a matter of time before you're arrested. No, this can't be. Maria collapsed to her knees. Then the sound of a police siren approached to take her away. Maria was eventually arrested and sent to prison. I'll be fine. I have Tony's inheritance. As long as I have that. Sorry, but you won't get Tony's inheritance. Before being taken by the police, Maria had been muttering to herself. I smiled at her and spoke. What? But I'm Tony's. I'm Tony's wife. We never filed the divorce papers. Tony had prepared the divorce papers but never submitted them. He wrote, "I know I should free Kathy. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it." Along with the letter, he had sent the unfiled divorce papers. So, Tony and I were still married. His inheritance goes to me, his wife, and Ryan, his child. Not a penny will go to you or those toxic parents. After declaring that, she went berserk, shouting incomprehensible words. Just as she was about to lay hands on me, the police arrived and took Maria away. "Hey, Kathy, we were also being threatened by her."
Yeah.
"That woman asked us to meddle between her and Tony." Seeing Maria taken away, my in-laws sidled up to me. I glared at them. "Because of you too, I lost my beloved husband, and Ryan lost his only father. Tony trusted you till the end as his parents, and you betrayed him."
Yeah.
"Ryan is our grandson, Tony's only child." When my father-in-law suddenly raised his voice, I shot him a cold stare. "Only that child has Tony's blood. So, don't you dare lay claim to Ryan." "That's right. That child is our grandchild." I understood my in-laws' intentions well. They wanted to take Ryan, grab Tony's inheritance, and have someone look after them in their old age. "Would I ever hand over Tony's child to you?" "That's right, children aren't tools for your convenience." We shouted back at them, and we left the in-laws' house. Word had it that due to the police visit and our argument, the neighbors had started keeping an eye on the in-laws, viewing them with suspicion. They were already known as a troublesome couple, and this incident had made them a constant topic of gossip. They're reaping what they sowed with their son. "Mom, did you say something?" "It's nothing. I was just thinking about what to make for dinner tonight." I no longer cared about such people. From now on, I'll live for Ryan's sake. As I gently stroked Ryan's head, I made up my mind. Later on, Maria, upon her release, seemed to have relied on Tony's parents. But of course, they wouldn't take her in. They had a huge fight at the door, and she felt even more out of place. Driven out by both Tony's and her own family, Maria vanished into the night. Well, she has a decent appearance. Hopefully, she can earn enough to pay me the alimony. In the end, it seems she wasn't even pregnant. With no child to suffer, I felt relieved. My in-laws, causing more trouble, ended up selling their house and moving away. My father hired a detective to investigate, and he found out they caused trouble even at their new place and attracted the attention of some nasty people. Those two will never find happiness. That's good to hear. Knowing the bad guys got their due, I felt genuinely relieved. A few years later. "I'm off, Mom. Take care. Don't stay out too late." "I know." I sent Ryan off to school with a smile. Ryan had grown into a high schooler. He still loved studying and had grown into a kind boy who looked out for me. "Dad made me promise to protect you if anything happened." When he started middle school, Ryan told me that. Before Tony left, he had a long talk with Ryan. He told him to look after me if he was no longer around. "So, I've decided to protect you for Dad too." Seeing Ryan smile, I remembered Tony's letter. "If I can never come back to you, please forget about me and live happily. No need for revenge." Tony cared about us until the very end. His last wish was that we don't seek revenge. Even though I couldn't grant that wish, I have no regrets. Because of my actions then, we have our happiness now. I feel at peace. My parents still help us, and Mr. Smith, perhaps out of guilt, supports us financially. Actually, I've been learning business from Mr. Smith. "Oh, really?" "My dream is to take over his company someday." Ryan talks about the future with a smile. "I'll warmly watch over him." "Please watch over us too," I said to the photo in the living room. In the picture, Tony seemed to smile gently and nod in agreement.